Okay, you ready to go, Sean? You
Let's
ready
do
to
it.
do this? All right. I am so grateful to be here on this beautiful day. How about you, my friend?
Oh my goodness, it is just like, look at this. Not a cloud in the sky, a few tourists running around. It's great.
Hey, the more the merrier.
Another day in paradise.
That's right. That's right. And we get to live here.
Yes.
And being here today, I'm glad to be with you. It's always good to be with you, bro. And we also have Jill Franko here with us today.
The Jill Franko.
The Jill.
Jill, you're running for seat what?
Number 4.
Seat number 4.
Ooh.
Wow, for the
Lucky
Ashland
number.
City Council.
That's right. I want to see Jill sitting to my right.
Well, you endorsed Ms. Franco. Why don't you tell our listeners why that happened so Jill can kind of get into...
Yeah, so we can jump into this. So I first met Jill, heard of Jill, when all of this was coming down with the school district.
Ah.
And as a matter of fact, you brought that to my attention, Sean.
Ah.
Yeah. And I started to look into what was going on, and I found out that our community development department was making their budget and making themselves look good on the backs of our children.
Oof.
And that is something that was brought to my attention by you, Jill. And when I saw that you were brave enough to speak up and say, no, we're not going to do it like this. Because you're brave, because you're honest, because you were transparent, because you took the time to turn the page and look a little deeper into what is going on, it just blew me away. And that is what we need on council. We need courage. We need bravery. We need somebody who's going to ask the hard questions and turn the page and ask how come. Follow the numbers. And because of what you did, it saved the taxpayers money. And also now we have a cap on the cost of what can be charged to
for big projects.
Yeah. And for that, I was very grateful, and I said, I got to meet this woman.
Yep.
And you're running. I got to endorse this woman.
Well, there's a real sense of urgency right now in the times that we live in. And I think having children really brings that into perspective. And we don't have time to sit around and wait for government to move. Bureaucracy has just gone so slowly, and our kids are asking us to do something, to make a change, to move things forward, and to just, try stuff even if you have to, but make the change that is so needed. So that's what really has inspired me, or at least just keeps me moving, keeps me humble, and keeps me going forward and trying to do something different. And so I think that's a real perspective that's needed. Our children are constantly bringing us into reality of what's going on in the world. And by children, I also mean the kids in the school district, like having that connection to them, again, just helps me with a broader perspective of all of our kids, not just my own. And there's a lot of kids struggling out there. And what I felt with my time on the school district was that I could make a bigger impact having that knowledge now on the school district and bringing it to the city. Mm-hmm. I really want to advocate for all the citizens. Our most vulnerable are our seniors and our children. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that I want to bring a voice to.
I like that.
That's really impressive. And I would say I met you through your advocacy with the schools and your position on making sure that the revenues that were allocated to education and facilities was in fact used for, the facilities for our kids. And to me, that was super important. It didn't resonate well with me when I heard of the extra, costs being associated to the schools, the bond and you're the one that stepped up and said, no, I don't think that's right. And, to me, it was like, wow, we have a smiling assassin. I mean, this lady's, this lady's, in the game to win it. And that's what really impressed me. Someone who understands the struggles for families, has kids, is involved in the system. You put yourself out there by being an elected official. So this isn't a completely new, swing at the ball. You've been elected. You know how the process works. I think that that stood out for me, and something that I am grateful that you've stepped up and you're running for office.
Yeah,
so
now taking to another level. Right,
yeah,
Sean?
but I think that's the point. I mean, you kind of realize, and I kind of went through that on the budget committee too. It was like, okay, all these opinions, it's great, but it really, to impact change, you need to get a seat at the table.
That's right.
And until you get there, it's, I don't want to say you're discounted, but you can't impact the change that you see and you hear people, clamoring for, unless you get there.
Yeah.
And that's what this is really about, change for our community.
Yeah. I think too, you have to have like a real strong conviction and a real strong sense of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah.
Because, especially in an elected office,
Oh
it
my
gets
goodness.
tested a lot. You get put on the spot, you get those, your ideals kind of get tested. And so you really have to have that strong sense of what you're trying to change and hold true to that.
Totally. I would think it's actually even harder coming from a business thing, because in business, it's not personal, right? You don't get into the personal BS that, small town politics, it's vicious, right?
Yeah.
It's vicious. And in the real world, it's like, hey, here is whatever you're doing, and the mission statement, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And there's not the personal attacks and vindictiveness that I've seen in Ashland.
No,
It's
that's
startling.
so true. Yeah.
And
And the
it's
judgments
disheartening, but
made,
hopefully,
and
like anything else, we'll get through that. So tell people why you're running.
Well, I'm running to make a change. And I, one of the things that I saw with this school district, the first time I met you, I had no idea who you were. I just went, this is wrong. This is money being taken from our kids. And I don't know what's going on here, but the voters have continually and generously supported the children of this school district, and they believe in education.
Absolutely.
And, I believe education is the foundation of our democracy. It's in its own crisis, and the community has loudly spoken to support it. And so that's where we need a community that reflects that. Our institutions, our public institutions need to reflect that. And what I was seeing was a public institution that was pushing up against that, what that was going. And I get a little more of it now, right? I understand that each of our departments in our city are all kind of struggling with budgetary problems. But what ends up happening is then they start to internalize it, or they start to kind of look inward as to, well, how can we get as much of this money and hoard it almost? And they have this kind of scarcity mentality. And that's not what's going to move us forward. What's going to move us forward is finding a way to come together, is finding a way to go, let's start over. Let's start with our needs. Let's start with who we want to be. And then let's become that. Let's make sure we're focused on it. Let's make sure we're moving in that direction. And let's have conviction about it, and keep us moving in a direction where everyone is okay, right? Not just our kids, not just our seniors, but the 70% of working poor that are struggling all the time. There shouldn't be people that are having to choose between housing and childcare, housing and work, housing and a medical bill. There's all these forced choices that are having to be made for just basic, stable living, and we shouldn't be forced to do that. Our citizens shouldn't.
Do you know, Jill, right now we are approaching, when we talk about how much the citizens of Ashland are tapped out, taxes maxed out, utilities, people wondering, should I pay my rent or my utility bills? Something is going to be amiss here. As we approach this budget in February, March.
Well, it'll probably kick off, budget committee discussions, February, March kind of thing.
February, March. And, you're going to be on council and you are going to be on that budget committee.
Yeah.
And looking at what we have in front of us, I don't know if we are circling the drain just yet, but we're getting ready to fall in that direction. So tell me and tell our listeners, what do you think about the budget?
Yeah.
Where do you see the miss?
Well, I mean, I think that we clearly have a structural deficit issue. My treasurer for my campaign is the old school district finance director. And
Not old, right?
No, not as an old.
Not in
No,
that
she's
sense.
younger than me, actually. She's very young. But she took one look at our budget and was just like, oh my gosh, it's worse than I thought. So, I mean,
Can you say that again?
Yeah, oh my God, it's worse than I thought. But I mean, you can just pick any fund and you go down a rabbit hole that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where this begins or where to start. But that's okay. It's tremendous opportunity for us to look into opportunities to start over, to, I really believe in outcomes-based budgeting model, which really supports and incentivizes good managers of people and funds. And it right now, some of our managers, it's not even their fault. We're incentivizing them to kind of tuck money away so that at the end of the year, when it trickles down, they kind of reactionary spend, because in that way, they make sure that they get the same budget the next year. And so when we keep basing our budget on the previous year, no wonder our money is not representing our values.
Doesn't do any good. I hear to that. I mean, that is so spot on. It's got to be, and we've talked about this, the budget reflects the values of your community, right?
Yeah.
And to have this kind of like force fed, I have, X amount of dollars left, I need to spend it or else I won't get that plus 7% next year. It's just craziness. I mean, the budget's doubled in the last 10 years. It's just unsustainable to keep plowing away the same way. It just doesn't make sense. And it's going to be dramatically much more difficult in a recession when things, tourists maybe don't show up as much, people don't spend the disposable income they have as much, things change. So it's refreshing to hear that, you're looking at it that way. So, you just haven't parachuted into Southern Oregon from somewhere, right? I mean, you grew up here and then you moved away and you came back. And so tell people a little bit about you in that sense. So, they understand who you are.
Yeah. So I grew up in Wairika. My mom lived here. So I did third grade here and I would spend the weekends here. And after, just like a lot of us who grew up in small towns, the day after I graduated high school, I left Dodge and I went and spent most of my adult life in the Bay Area, in San Francisco area, and did a lot of things. I'm a hummingbird. So I owned my own small business. I was a mortgage broker during the peak of the real estate market in the early 2000s, and then saw it all the way down. And then transferred into corporate health insurance. I sold group medical benefits to companies of 200 to 2,000. I worked for one of the largest insurance firms in the country. And after I had my first child, I was the only female executive at my firm, and I asked for flexibility after having a child, and I was told no. And I offered to work commission only, which Sean's a fellow salesperson, so he understands that's a big offer. But I just wanted flexibility as a new working mom, and I wanted to stay in my career. And I asked for flexibility. I was told no again. And at the time, there were a lot of women service workers that were kind of starting to ask for more pay. And, when you walked into the floor of our insurance business, you would see all women working the lowest paid jobs and the service positions. And then all the men were in the single offices. And I was the lone woman. And so I spoke to the board of directors at there, and I said, this is not going to work. You cannot say that you're fighting for women in the executive positions, but then every time they have a kid, you're not working with them. So through that meeting, after that meeting, our CSO, which is the chief sales officer, was a woman, super powerful, admirable woman. And she changed it. She changed, because of that, she was able to change all the service worker positions to be now executive level positions and higher paid and get benefits and all those good things.
And
So-
see, I need to jump in here because that's another reason why I admire you. When you left it better than it was when you got there.
Right on. Yeah.
Just like when you were elected official to the school district, you're there and you left it better than it was when you got there.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of counselor we need on council today. You were brave enough to speak up, and because of you speaking up, you did so much of service to all the other women there.
Yeah.
And that's, so I'm just going to toot your horn.
Thank you. Thanks.
Because that is what we need, not someone who's complacent or just kind of goes along to get along.
Yeah.
I think that something you said earlier is about the sense of urgency.
Right on.
And there is a sense
Absolutely.
of urgency. When I look at everything that's in front of council right now, when I look at housing, food insecurity, utility rates, this franchise fee that people don't even understand. They get their utility bill. What is this? So when I think of the things that are in front of council,
Yeah.
what do you see as one of your things that you would like to address?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
a couple of things?
Yeah. So what are
Yeah.
your top issues? Yeah. Couple
My
issues.
top issues are affordability, the budget change, so economic diversity, and then safety. And, affordability to me comes in three buckets. It's, affordable housing for our workforce. So if our nurses, our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our firefighters, our policemen, if they work here, they should be able to live here. We need to look for options for that demographic. And then also we can need kind of low income housing. So people who work in our restaurants, there are chefs, there are, all of our service workers all across town. And so we need housing for that demographic. And then lastly, our unhoused. We have about 150 that identify as Ashland residents. And 70% of those are, like I mentioned before, working poor. So we need to give stable housing for the unhoused. So that's how I look at addressing affordability. They're all different solutions, which require significant partnerships between corporations, between nonprofits, between for-profit and public institutions, especially. SOU has a lot of land they're looking at, offloading, and have been, which is part of the reason I got involved, is because our teachers can't afford to live here and we're struggling to attract good teachers. SOU just made 2 offers to professors that both turned them down because they could not find housing. So, the housing shortage is across the board. And so it's going to really require, obviously, looking at extending our urban growth boundary. None of us want Bend, but we need to methodically and carefully and strategically think about how we can extend those borders. So, but there's just several ideas. There's a lot of amazing citizens that have tremendous ideas. It's one of the brilliance about Ashland is that we have so many amazing people that move here that, it's really going to require collaboration between citizens, but also between all the different institutions.
It's well said. Confident, concise, and committed to building a better Ashland. Oh my goodness. Where do I vote yes? So, hearing you speak about different things, I think you kind of represent, what Ashland, really needs. And that's, driven parents with families that understand that, our future is giving our children these opportunities to, expand upon their dreams, to live here. The thing that kind of really got me involved was hearing some elected officials saying, well, when kids get older, they just leave. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Your job as an elected official is to provide them the opportunity to live here, build their future here, raise their families here. That's what I look at.
Yeah.
And seeing your work on the school board and hearing you through this campaign, I mean, that resonated with me. You want to speak a little bit to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. When, like I mentioned, when I first got on the school board, I saw the need for affordable housing. And at the time, SOU was doing a presentation on all the properties that they were looking to sell. And so jumped in and looked at the different things available and was meeting with an individual in the district who was also passionate about this topic. And we started looking at opportunities there. But one of the people that they connected me with was Jim Westrick, who was a previous school board member, who was also very passionate about this. Right. And we were talking, and, after recently I just went to the Rent Burden Forum put on by the Housing
Human Services Commission.
Yes. And one of the things I was disappointed in hearing was a lack of ideas around bringing families here. And most of it was because it was in response to the study that was done by Echo Northwest, which basically said the trajectory of Ashland in the direction that it's going is that that percentage of families in Ashland is going to continue to decrease. Right. So in 2000, we used to have 30% of Ashland were families, and now we're at 20%. And they just kind of resolved themselves to this future and went, well, here's what the study said, so we're going to make sure that all of our planning and all of our building is around that. And that troubles me as a school board director, Absolutely. As someone who wants families here, as someone who wants to live in a multi-age, multi-generational community, that we aren't changing that trajectory, that there's no even consideration that, hey, we don't have to go that direction just because that's where we're going now. It doesn't mean we have to just resolve ourselves to that. So I would really like to see, again, when I talk about multi-dimensional solutions to the affordability issue, I really want to make sure that we're also including families in that equation, that we're also including opportunities for families to live here as well.
Absolutely. It's definitely workforce housing plus a, affordability for families, kind of theme. $600,000, $800,000 single family homes. I think we got a lot of those.
Yeah.
Because we talk about economic development, and that's something that, a lot of members of the city council say, oh, it's really dear to my heart. But, here we are again, 2 years later, not much has changed, right? But our economic future is really tied to our hip on how we provide housing for people to be able to work, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. And I know that's, something that you've touched base on, and I completely agree. I think that's really where we need to go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the housing and jobs has to kind of go together, yeah, totally. Right? Mm-hmm. And something that you've touched on before, Jill, was the developing Ashland through jobs and what we have right now, what we already have here in our backyard. I've heard you talk about that a little bit. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we moved here was I really wanted my kids to have kind of an intimate connection with the outdoors. And what I noticed living in an urban area was that their only connection with the outdoors was through parks. And as valuable as parks are, especially in urban areas, I wanted them to just be able to walk out their door and walk into the woods within 5 minutes. And that's what we have here in Ashland. You can get on a bike, you can walk on foot, and you can be in the outdoors within minutes. So that's kind of the foundational thing that I think a lot of us share, and that what has brought us here. But it's endless, right? OSF is an amazing, one of the best regional theaters in the world. Our wine country is rated top 10 in the world. We have just one of the restaurants voted, Moss was just ranked one of the top 50 restaurants in the country. We have amazing musicians. Our busking, it's like if you just go and watch anyone playing music at Lithia Park or on the corner, it's like you find out they're like this world-class musician. So that is endless. we have obviously world-class mountain bike trails, world-class hiking trails. It's not like we all live in Idaho and we're like, let's build a baseball field and then people will come. It's all here,
Yeah, it's
right?
here. I
It's
know.
all here. It's innate. So we don't have to work that hard, but yet our businesses are struggling. We've got to focus on all of Ashland, not just downtown, but there's tremendous opportunity here. One of the things that I hear a lot of people talking about is the golf course. And I live on the south side of town. And when Patrick was running the golf course, for the first time on the south end of town, we had a place to go and to build community. And that park, it's a park. It's not just a golf course. There are people that walk those trails, that watch birds. There are people that walk their dogs on that trail. Patrick had weddings going on there. We had food. He had food trucks coming in and live music, and it was a place for community. And we are just all heartbroken at just the condition of the golf course and how we've kind of lost that communal space that we had on the south end of town. So I know that was a bit of a tangent, but I was
No,
thinking
but I
about
think
the
you're
south
spot
end
on.
of
I mean, that's something that's right there. I mean, we have to, we're going to have to face that head on. I mean, one of the things that came up in that recent survey the city did, one of the two, I think, majority votes was the city stopped funding, the golf course.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of differences of opinion about how to proceed. I mean, case in point, it's something that finally has gotten to an untenable position, both fiscally and the condition of the cost, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
It will be, as we move forward. But I agree. I think Patrick did a great job with it. And to me, when he kind of said, "Hey, the Parks Department is not listening to me anymore, so I'm out of here."
Yeah.
I was like, "Ooh."
Yeah.
It was.
It was a shame.
It's
yeah.
a shame.
He got it pretty close to zero for the first time. I mean, it was still a loss. But I get drought water conditions are real, and golf courses certainly typically are not ideal for drought conditions. But there are, it's one of the reasons why when we look at the water treatment plant, why I want to see more creative solutions. You've said it, Sean.
Can you say that again,
I know. I mean, you said it to Scott Fleury very kindly, just said, I just want to see creative solutions.
Exactly.
And, I think it's a perfect look. Back in 2012, I think was initially when the consultants came and looked at that water treatment plant, and it was quoted at $12 million to replace it. And back then, if we would have done it, great. I mean, 12 million was still a lot back then, but it wasn't 44 million. Now that we're at 44 million and we're looking at a loan, to me, and we're also tying in to TAP, right? So why don't we look at a smaller water treatment plant? Why don't we look at building infrastructure for reclaimed water? And then when you build infrastructure for reclaimed water, now we're looking at, okay, now we can get water to the golf course. I know that's a long distance and there's a lot of problems. It's not as easy as I make it sound, but the point is that there are creative solutions. And even if we start building the infrastructure for reclaimed water, which I think we need to do, then we can't really solve our problems. We have to be solving at least, a multiplicity of problems at the same time.
Has anyone ever told you make a lot of sense?
Exactly. And when you look down the line, the idea of reclaimed water, global warming is real.
Yeah.
So we have 25 years of life left on this water treatment.
Yeah.
So taking the money that they want, that 44 million, and using a fraction of that for reclaimed water makes sense as we look into the future of Ashland, right?
Yeah, right.
So that is an obvious solution that I wholeheartedly agree with you on that, because it's not like it's going to spoil.
Right.
We need that. Right. And we need to look down the line.
Yeah.
We just can't put a Band-Aid on things anymore. And that's what I look at. Sean and I always discuss living within our means when it comes time to the budget and it comes time to all of these things that, sure I wanted, but do I need this right
Yes.
now?
Right.
And to ask, do we need this right now? Oh, we have 25 years of life. Well, maybe not.
Right. Well, that's my whole point about, a $300 million capital improvement project. Of course, they have to be great ideas, but they have to be essential great
Yes,
ideas.
yes.
Those are the two variables, right? I mean, how do we make it work, And, I think we need to have that discussion around, our CIP plans. So that's what I'm advocating for. And I think you'd be a great addition to the Ashland City Council. You're passionate. I think you're thorough in how you look at things. You're fair. And I think you believe in collaboration. And I think Ashland would be well served. So
Thank you.
the best of luck.
Thank you.
Jill
Thank
Franko,
you.
position number 4.
Yes.
Please make sure and vote. Please vote.
And what is your website? How would people?
My website is Jill for Community. You can just Google Jill Franko with a K, Franko, and you'll find my website. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere.
Good. Good.
What a
That's what you
cover.
need to
Jill,
be.
and if you type in Jill for Community, that's where you can find my Facebook and Instagram.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad
you
you
both.
shared so we can learn a little bit more about you. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. You're awesome. I think it's
You are
great. I think it's great that you came, and I can't wait for November 9th.
Right?
Yes.
I bet you can't either.
We're going to be up all night. Yep.
That's the bottom line.
Bottom line.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
So that's it. So that's what we do. Yeah.